The federal government is promising to spend billions more on defense this year, and today it unveiled a major part of its strategy to roll out that cash. Canada spent $41 billion on defense last year, but to reach NATO's 2% of GDP spending target this year, that needs to jump to $63 billion. So with that in mind, the Carney government has announced a new Defence Industrial Agency. It aims to streamline Canada's process for big military purchases into one office to speed up spending. The agency also wants to build up Canadian manufacturing and diversify spending. Right now, the Liberals say about 75 cents of every Canadian defense procurement dollar goes to the United States. So can a new agency be enough to change that? Stephen Fuhr is the Secretary of State in charge of defense procurement, and he joins me now. Stephen Fuhr, it's good to see you. Thanks for being here today, sir.
Thanks for having me today.
Let's talk about the need for this defense investment agency. When Canada tries to buy something for its military, what are the specific bottlenecks happening right now that you think this can fix?
Process is one of them. We have fragmented or dispersed procurement. We have a number of agencies that are responsible for this. There's fragmented oversight. There's duplication of effort. Those are just things that happen when you spread a process out over many organizations. So that goes away day one. And then we'll use best in practices procurement processes that we have. We've always had levers and tools that we could use. We're going to make sure we use the correct ones for the correct procurements. And this agency is solely focused on this. So, the level of effort and energy that's going in to make this happen is going to be substantially different than what was happening in the past.
Okay, so basically because a bunch of people were involved, nobody was really in charge, nobody was really responsible, so nobody was the prime mover? Is that it? Like it's the committee effect?
Well, you could argue it that way, sure. Governments of both stripes for decades have said they wanted a single point of accountability for defense procurement for all sorts of reasons, including the ones we just discussed, and now we have one.
Okay, so I want to go to a specific example if I can, and this is from a story my colleague Murray Brewster did, in that there's a program to update military pickups, SUVs, and this started in 2017. Now this is the off-the-shelf stuff, right? This is you can buy bulk at the lot. They only just finished an options analysis in 2024, so it took 7 years to do an analysis, and the full timeline to get the new vehicles is 17 years. Yeah. Does this fix that? That seems crazy to me.
This will absolutely fix that. There's I could give you some airplane examples as well. And what makes it even worse, trucks maybe not so much because technology hasn't changed, but if you get into something super technical and it takes that amount of time to deliver, imagine what the capability looks like when technology is shrinking in terms of how fast it's turning over with a defense procurement effort that is way outside the technology cycle. So on more complex things, the effect is even worse than not just getting it on time. You'll get something years down the road that doesn't work for you or meet your needs anymore. So yes, we have to do things much faster. We have to deliver requirements. We have to identify what we need quicker. We need to get the requirements out the door faster. We have to make sure that we use proper processes, commercial contracting, and just keep our eye on the ball more. Plus, we're spending more money. A lot of the delays could have been, and I wasn't around in 2017, I'm just back now after a 6-year break. Some of it could have been funding. They could have run into funding problems. There's a whole host of things that can derail procurement, and we're going to try and make sure that we juggle all the balls at the same time.
Okay, so I don't think there's going to be a shortage of money if the Prime Minister is true to his word and he's going to meet the NATO commitment that he's committed to and beyond to 5%. But, so much of that historically has gone to the United States. You talked today about 75% of Canadian defense spending goes to the U.S., and you want to recalibrate that. But what's the target? What share of spending? I know you have to go case by case, but there's got to be a global number somewhere in the government's mind of what they think the share of every dollar is that goes to America.
We're going to make best efforts. I can't give you a figure because, to your point, it is case by case. Our primary goal here is to leverage Canadian industry the best we can when we can to stimulate our own economy and create great Canadian jobs here in Canada. We have excellent capacity and capability in space, aerospace, shipbuilding, AI. It's all here. And if we can do it here, we're going to do it here. If we can't do it here, we're going to work with like-minded partners that share our values and diversify. We need to become less reliant on the U.S., and more resilient. This is our focus.
But I mean, it's not all here at scale and readily available, or you wouldn't be spending 75 cents of every dollar in the United States, right?
Again, I would disagree. It really depends. I mean, we just got really, I'll just use the word lazy, of doing it a certain way all the time, and we just can't afford to do that anymore. We do have, you're right. We don't have it at scale everywhere, but we have it at scale in a number of places. Shipbuilding is one of them. Aerospace is another. Space is another. So yes, we're going to find those places. We're already talking to companies so that we can help leverage as we move forward. And the Defense Department identifies what it needs, and we're going to do the very best we can to leverage Canadian industry.
So as this domestic defense industrial capacity grows and scales up, you're still going to need to buy things for the Canadian Armed Forces. So what compromises and calibrations are you willing to make there to buy Canadian? Or does the equipment needs of the CAF, being as profound and as chronic as they've been, just mean you have to keep buying American until there's a domestic option?
Well, a lot of it will come down to time, too. I mean, we're asking the Canadian Armed Forces to do a job every day. And, we just can't wait to make it happen in Canada if they need it now. So I've got a lot of balls to juggle. Again, I need to get them the equipment they need in a timely way. I need to stimulate the economy the best I can. And, I need to make sure that all these things happen at once. So time will also play a factor. It's probably the most critical thing, I think, industry and the CAF, everybody involved in this process has said. Open, fair, transparent is kind of the mantra of defense procurement, but no one has ever brought time into the equation. We have to bring timeliness into it. So transparent and timely is really what we're looking at.
So if the CAF needs something and a Canadian option needs like a month or two to scale up, you might be able to wait. But if it's a year to two down the horizon, forget it. You got to go. We got
to go. I mean, the CAF's needs are. I mean, there's a hierarchy of things that need to happen here. The CAF's needs are very, very high on the priority list.
Right. So we've talked about the domestic angle here, and we've talked about the U.S. There are references to working with like-minded nations like the U.K., France, and Australia are specifically mentioned in the statement from the Prime Minister today. Does that mean working with them to like bulk buy, or does that mean buying from them if there's no domestic option in preference of an American option? How should we interpret that?
Well, I would throw South Korea on that list. I mean, they're a good ally of Canada, and we're looking at some of their products right now. We want to also allow our companies to work their way into their supply chains and to their build. Like Europe builds lots of different defense products. So Canadian supply chains that may not be built out here and servicing, like our need is relatively small. Europe's is quite a bit bigger on scale. Where we satisfy our own needs and we have excess capacity, where can we put that capacity? Where can we sell ourselves outside our own borders? I mentioned that we're very, very good at a lot of things in the defense space. And I don't think that we have really appreciated that as a country. And we're going to do the best we can to parlay our skills and our wares outside our border, in addition to trying to buy it ourselves. We're going to do both those things.
So, but could we see, a South Korea, Australia, I mean, France and the UK make more sense on interoperability and buying things together because they are NATO countries. I mean, could we see that as part of this process, or is it mostly about the economic links to connect back and forth?
The economic links are important. Obviously, we need to stimulate our economy in a big way. NATO compatibility or interoperability is the term that we use, is also very, very important. If we're out in the field working or doing our job, or the Canadian Forces is doing its job and it needs parts and it needs support or ammo or whatever, it has to be NATO compatible. Right. Whether it's made in a NATO nation or not is really immaterial. Other countries make NATO compliant things. All that's mapped out. You just have to make sure the thing that you got is NATO compatible. Doesn't have to be made by a NATO country.
Well, interoperability, that was one of the key selling points of the F-35s, right? And I know you said today that jet review is with the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister will make the decision on that, and you don't know when the timing will be on that. But Canada's also buying things like mobile rocket systems, Poseidon surveillance planes from the United States.
Correct.
Are other purchases going to get reviewed, or is it the F-35s because of the specific? Do they stand alone because of the specific nature of that?
Yeah, you bring up a good point. So there's a number of procurements in the hopper per se that are very, very late in the hopper. I don't see us, again, because we have to do this quickly. Time is one of the things. Do I have time to go back and look and recompete or look at options on every little thing that's going through? No, we don't. We have to get the equipment to the military as quickly as we can. So I don't see a big reorganization of things that are very, very close to head out the door. But moving forward, there is lots of opportunity to apply these new lenses to procurement, and we will be applying them.
Okay, just as a quick final point, it's going to be a while before this is up and running, this new process. I mean, when are we going to tangibly see the change that was promised in the campaign and is going to be delivered by this new agency?
I would argue you've seen it already. Submarines are going to be, or if we take all 12 submarines and with the infrastructure and all that stuff, could possibly be one of the biggest procurements in the history of this country, militarily speaking. And we've already selected a procurement process by down selecting 2 machines that are compliant with the military's high level requirements. That is going to shave a lot of time. I think contract award originally was 2028. I am very confident we can get to contract award quite a bit faster than that, so we can get shovels in the ground on our coast, building infrastructure, and get this whole process rolling. That's happening now.
Okay. Stephen Fuhr, the Secretary of State in charge of Defence Procurement. Appreciate the time. Thanks for being here today, sir.
Thank you, David.
Okay, we're going to start there today with the Power Panel. We've got Michelle Cadario. She was Deputy Chief of Staff to former Prime Minister Paul Martin. Peter MacKay is a former Conservative Cabinet Minister. He was in Defence, interestingly enough. Andrew Thompson is a former Saskatchewan NDP Cabinet Minister. And here with me in the studio, in person, is Shachi Kurl. She is the President of the Angus Reid Institute. Happy Thursday, gang. Good to see you all. Peter MacKay, I know in your new life you do a little bit of work in the procurement, but let's talk about how it worked inside government when you were there. They might just be getting around to finishing some of the projects that maybe you started. I mean, what were the bottlenecks that you saw internally that a move like this can help, or are the Conservatives right that this is just more bureaucracy piling on the problem?
Sure. Thanks very much, David. Look, I just came from the Defence and Security Atlantic Conference, and there's a buzz. There's a feeling of positivity with respect to the big promises, eye-watering numbers in terms of dollar figures, and talk of a new submarine program. This office, this Defence Investment Agency, the DIA, will be DOA unless, in fact, we do see some of these projects move. When the minister talks about moving at the speed of relevance, it's really moving at the speed of reasonableness, because these projects, of course, after a contract is signed, still will take time. And you no longer hear talk of deliverology, but from a defense perspective, there is a critical need for a number of important pieces of equipment, F-35 being one of them. But having a new level of bureaucracy might bring various departments and individuals together, deputy ministers, assistant deputy ministers. In the case of national defense, you have a number of people responsible on the procurement side. We did this, the Conservative government did this around the National Shipbuilding Procurement Strategy, and it did work. It didn't work so well on things like fixed-wing SAR. And I do believe that the minister is sincere when he says we want to get it right, but there is this gap now in terms of capabilities. And so it will all depend, as it always does, on the efficiency of bringing this group of various departments together. What I would say finally is it's the machinery of government. Right. And I do share the concerns that have been expressed about putting another layer on top of a number of departments that have, in a way, been cross-threaded in terms of their mandate. Public Works want a perfect contract. Industry Canada want every piece of the equipment built in Canada. Treasury Board, of course, want to get very much into the numbers, finance as well. And then the Department of Defense says, this is the piece of equipment that we need now, and we need it urgently. Right. And so I want to be hopeful, just like I want to be hopeful on the commitment to a bigger spend. I think there is a lot of distance between now and actually the outcome that members of the armed forces and Canadians generally will see. Right.
I mean, Michelle, the way it is explained by the government is that it's not so much, they say, not more bureaucracy. It's sort of stripping various parts to put together to give a clear focus, because, you know, I was talking to Steve Fuhr about the story Murray Brewster did about just buying trucks, like not even military combat trucks. It took like 8 years to do the options analysis, right? And you know, that's not even a complicated purchase. It has to get better. Oh, we don't have Michelle's audio there for a sec. Michelle, is going to stop you there. I can't hear. Oh, there you go. I think you're up now. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
There we go. I think this is an example of Mark Carney coming in, and he is looking at how things, have worked in the past. He has some experience in the government, and he also has this huge commitment of getting out and spending 3.5% of our GDP every single year. Well, going with what we've done is clearly not the answer. We're not going to be able to do that kind of procurement and that kind of get that military spend in that short a time. And so, I think he's just kind of breaking it apart. And he's bringing people together, and I take it not as another level of bureaucracy, but I think it's like very much cutting through the bureaucracy and kind of creating a specialized team who are very focused in on the spend that is about to come, focused in on the priorities in terms of the defence space, and focused in on using Canadian products like steel, like aluminum, like other Canadian contractors as much as possible as part of this broader industrial strategy. So I actually, I think that it's bold, that's for sure, and it's different, which can be scary for people, for sure. But I think we have to recognize what we had was no be-all and end-all, and was not going to get us to the end line. So I think cracking it all apart is an interesting way to go. Proof will be seen if we can actually get the projects over the line and build some efficiencies through this kind of new cracked open system. But, I applaud him for being bold once again for the agenda.
Well, Andrew, I've never run big procurement projects. I've never run big bureaucracies. But I mean, to an amateur like me, it kind of makes sense to give something a clear focus with one person in charge who is ultimately accountable for it, rather than dispersing accountability across multiple departments. I don't know. Does that make sense to you as a former finance minister?
Yeah, for sure. You always want, as they say, one throat to choke, and I think that's been one of the problems we've had within the bureaucracy of military procurement. Is just, as Peter outlines, far too many fingers in the pie. I love his term about, what was it, cross-hatched or cross-threaded. It's tied up in a knot, and we can't seem to get past the idea that we are not going to build in all of the nice gimmies that are going to make this a nice customized Canadian kind of product, when really what our forces need are us to get quickly the best available items on the market. And I think that's been one of the pieces that's been most troubling about our defence procurement, is we cannot seem to get past the ITB pieces, the piece that looks at what are we going to do to build up our own Canadian defence industry, make sure every business here gets a part of it, at the expense of actually getting the equipment on the ground. And I think this is one of the pieces that has got to be wrestled with. We'll see whether this agency is the one to do it. We'll see whether Carney actually does have, I don't know about the speed of relevance, I don't know what that means, but the actual ability to cut through and get this done.
Yeah, there are some riddles in some of the slogans these days. But, Shachi, it is kind of trying to do the twin thing of building out a defense industry here, but not waiting for that to happen before filling the needs. And reducing reliance on the United States, that last one may resonate out there with the public.
Well, it is it does resonate with the public. And so, look, from a public communications aspect of this, broadly, people don't really care if what mechanism or what agency or what new agency or old agency or public procurement process is required or announced in order to get to where Canadians are telling them to get to, which is stop spending so much on defense in the United States and try to do more in Canada, try to get to that point of self-reliance. We see that from the polling data. But, the Carney government, we've talked about this a lot. They're like me on a Saturday morning with the to-do list. Like, it's ambitious. It can't all get done.
How much do you get done on Saturdays, Shachi?
There's a lot to do on a weekend.
Yeah.
And so, I always come back to, and Peter's touched on this too, that hit point, that intersection where the announceables hit the deliverables. And, right now it really does feel like this is a government with a multi-tab Excel spreadsheet that's, it's got to do this many things here, this many things there. They're going to go to the public and say, well, look, we've made incremental progress on like 39 different things. Yay, us. And the big question is, in terms of the delivery, Is incremental progress going to be seen as useful, as helpful, as got or done as the maybe one or two things ultimately that this government will want to show for having delivered, quite literally that word, on some of these big projects?
Right. So it's a couple of big agenda items, right, Peter? There is obviously the DIA, the Defence Investment Agency, which is going to, fix procurement and create industrial benefits at home. There's also the MPO, the Major Projects Office, which is going to accelerate these nation-building projects. But these are new agencies with CEOs outside of necessarily of the way it's been done in the past. I mean, what does that tell us about how Prime Minister Carney intends to operate on these things?
Well, it tells you that, and to state the penetrating statement of the obvious, that things haven't been working in terms of the ability to procure, the ability to move big projects forward. I mean, I just add one thing in terms of both of these challenges with the new offices: depoliticize. Don't feel this pressing need when government changes to cancel everything the previous government did. I think Canadians would be quite happy with that for the most part, even if you could avoid the temptation to promise to do so. And I think Prime Minister Carney, give him credit, realizes that, look, we need to move away from some of these antiquated practices that have not achieved these results. I'm a little more worried, frankly, about the standing up of this Major Projects Office. I think, yes, there is this urgency, this sense to get things done quickly. They've been in office, I think, almost 6 months now. This office, I'm told, has, several rolling chairs and a plastic plant and little else. Several people had told me that they tried to contact someone to inquire about, well, what's the process actually to move forward? The only thing more scary about hearing we're going to have more offices is that we're going to have more process. So at least maybe that's a step in the right direction. But these major projects that were announced, many of them were already well underway. The big question, of course, is will these projects go into the energy sector in a meaningful way that will get Canadian product to Tidewater? That is the pressing question, I think. And that will, of course, lead to the other riddle in all of this is how do we pay for it? How do we pay for these major projects, these major defense investments that people instinctively know are necessary, but we're kind of working with an overdrawn account? It's going to be deficit spending. The size of that deficit we'll know soon, early November, when the budget comes down. But that is something I think we cannot overlook. New process, new offices, that doesn't answer the mail on how do we pay for it.
Well, look, we're going to talk a bit about the pipeline debate that has escalated in recent days in the next segment. But Michelle, I mean, does creating these new offices and using those to try to be catalysts in these areas, does that depoliticize it, as Peter suggests? Because we just see the Conservatives sort of dismissing it today. They're not really going to praise much of anything that the Carney government does. But does putting it outside depoliticize it in any way?
Well, I think it does, but I go back to Shachi's point. I don't think that this government has the luxury of only being able to focus in on one or two things. There are some really heavy demands, and there is an intense pressure in terms of what's going to happen with our economy, vis-a-vis trade, and these tariffs that are crippling some of our most important industries. Not to mention the defense promise and commitment that he has made in terms of NATO. So they have to be multi-pronged in terms of what they're looking at. And it also shows that Mark Carney isn't afraid of change. Right. He's bringing in people from the outside to do things a little bit in a different way. People who aren't familiar, quite frankly, with how things were done. So, I think that there's going to be probably a little bit of broken glass along the way. It's not going to be an easy route. And it probably will take a little bit of time to staff up, as Peter was referring to, and to kind of get the ball rolling. But I go back to what was in place clearly wasn't working in terms of doing anything with speed and moving things through the system. And so if those are the two priorities that the government has, and in terms of actually getting to that delivery of whether it's major projects or it's defense procurement, then he's shaking things up. And I think that that's something that we're learning about Mark Carney, is that he's not afraid of it. So we'll see how it kind of goes.
Okay, Andrew, then Shachi, and then I got to take a quick break.
Yeah, so I mean, let's just go back to this question of how we're going to pay for it for a second, because I think that one of the issues that keeps getting missed here is that, we took advantage of the so-called peace dividend when the Soviet Union fell apart 35 years ago. And no government, and that includes the conservative government of Stephen Harper, which continued to underfund the military for years. We have a massive backlog. And that money is going to have to be spent now. Unfortunately, it's urgently needed now. There's not been the kind of investment, there's not been the kind of foresight, there's not been the kind of processes put in place that would have made sure our armed forces were actually capable leading into this. So I think one of the voices that we should immediately discount in this is whoever it is that comes on these programs from the PBO and whines and complains about how expensive things are going to be, marking this up for the next 25 years. These are issues, these are items that are needed now. We're in a very dire state in terms of the Canadian Forces equipment, and this is going to have to be fixed quickly. And that means, unfortunately, if it has to be deficit financed, it has to be deficit financed. If that means not every Canadian firm gets their finger in the pie,
Right.
Not every Canadian firm is going to get their finger in the pie. We've got to make sure we're putting the Canadian defense and the defense forces first.
Yeah, as opposed to trying to squeeze every industrial benefit out of
Absolutely.
it, as it's been the pattern in the past. Quick 30 seconds, Shachyan, we got to take a break.
Well, it's impossible to do anything perfectly. They want to clearly be able to show progress on this, but also at the same time not put themselves in a situation where they've done things so haphazardly or so quickly that 2 years from now the Auditor General is asking questions about, well, where did this money go and what did that go for? Or have another BC Ferries built by a Chinese firm moment. So, there's a lot. Good luck.